Whitlock, we've talked a lot about Pete Carroll's loose culture. Do you blame him for the Seahawks' current dysfunction?
No, listen, it's the collection of egos and personalities they have in that locker room and on that defensive side of the ball. It started with Richard Sherman. It transferred to Cam Chancellor. It's Michael Bennett. And again, Bobby Wagner's basically calling it out. There's jealousy. There's competition within the organization, within that defensive side of the ball. I blame the players. And I got to be honest with you, I was completely satisfied watching that game. I can't stand Michael Bennett. I think he's been a cancer and a poison on that team. I think he's taken the attention off football. And that's what the Legion of Boom looks like, a team that football is a secondary issue for them. And the Rams came in and put a can of whoop ass on them, and I loved it.
You know what? I don't want to be a little hyperbolic here, but I followed the USC run for Pete Carroll. Top of the mountain. And then Chip Kelly and Harbaugh came into the Pac-12, these two offensive guys. And an hour later, USC was in the Emerald Bowl. And they went here, straight down. So Pete owns the NFC West, and here comes Sean McVay and Kyle Shanahan, these two offensive guys. They got a lot of cap space. They clearly have two franchise pocket quarterbacks. Seattle's got no cap space. They're old and entitled. They have to rebuild multiple parts of their team. I think the window's closed. I think, and again, it looks, and by the way, in USC, it was very player-driven, emotion-driven. You go to a USC practice, there were agents, movie stars, comedians, Snoop Dogg, Will Ferrell. The world loved them, much like the Seahawks. Volume, players, ESPN article attacking Russell Wilson anonymously. It feels like this loose culture, the window's short. Listen, in so many,
over.
I mean, I don't know. The Rams have better players. They have a more offensive-minded coach. They don't have to rebuild anything, and they have significantly more cap space. Like, I watched that game, and I'm like, Seattle's old, tired, and expensive, and they have to rebuild that offense. Everything. They got to rebuild everything in that offense. I don't know. It feels, to me, again, it feels like that is the Rams' the vision for years.
When I look at this team, and I don't know if it's coming from Pete Carroll, but I do know this just because I know the players on the team. I've had conversations with them. They pride themselves on being very honest with each other, brutally honest. And it seems like that's what's coming out of it. I really don't take too much of these guys calling each other out because they do it all the time. You see it on the sideline. They'll get in each other's faces. They're getting in fights with each other on the sideline, and they rally around it. It's a dysfunctional relationship. I'm sure a psychiatrist would say that's not how you're supposed to talk to each other, but it works for them, and it has worked for them. But I agree with you. I think this window is closing because those other teams, Garoppolo looks really good now.
Really good.
They're going to have so much cap space and room to go out there and get and develop those young players they have there. The same thing with the Rams. It looks like they're not going anywhere for a while, and they're going to be good for a while. But back to the question, is Pete Carroll to blame for this? I don't think so. I think it's the culture that he's developed, that honesty. But they're banged up right now. Do I think they're done? I'm not going to call them out yet because I think give those guys a chance to get healthy and get back there for next year. But they're done as far as I'm concerned this year.
I don't believe Pete Carroll is to blame because when they won the Super Bowl, we were praising him, and it works. This team that he configured together, it works. What I saw and what I listened to, even with Earl Thomas, he wasn't calling his teammate out. He was simply saying, you know, he didn't have it today. And that's not typical of Bobby Wagner. I think Bobby Wagner took it to a whole nother level when he went to social media and then responded the way he did. Now, I think the number one glaring thing that sticks out to me is Cam Chancellor. When Cam Chancellor is on that football field, this doesn't happen to their defense. This bickering, this back and forth doesn't happen. We've seen it from defense to offense going back across those lines, but we've never seen it against one another on that side of the ball. And I think Cam Chancellor has a lot to do with that. His not being there, his lack of presence, because he is a leader. He is the staple. He is the steady voice in that locker room that we don't hear outside of playing football.
Let me say this, and I don't want to make too much of this. I want to be serious, but you're pointing to Cam Chancellor. I'm pointing to Michael Bennett because, again, I think the culture may work when the focus is football. When you start injecting what Michael Bennett injected into this team and this organization. I mean, just last week, when they acted a fool down in Jacksonville, he's in the locker room. We're men. He's just a man. We're human beings. Why are you questioning everything? It's no longer about football. Now it's about, oh, we're oppressed, and because you're asking this question to this idiot who just acted an idiot on the football field, somehow now you're being racist or you're oppressing us. It's victimology. When you become a victim, it's hard to be a champion. And that's what I look at when I look at the Legion of Boom. That victim mentality injected by Michael Bennett, and that's what they look like. The Rams abused them, and they did look like victims yesterday.
Isn't it interesting, though? You never get any of this with, like, New England.
No.
But it's funny. We've talked on this show, Pittsburgh and Seattle. Very much players get a voice, and there's infighting. So what is to be learned here? I don't know. But in New England, Belichick's like, my assistant coaches don't get to talk. One voice, Tom and I, that's it.
Seattle is different than Pittsburgh because Seattle, to your point, Tony, they hold each other accountable. They hold each other to a high regard, and they're not afraid to say it, publicly or privately. And I think that's what made them so successful. I think what we saw yesterday was just a team that flat out says, we don't fear you anymore. We're not the little brother anymore. I've grown up, and I'm going to whoop you if you come into my face again.
Real quick.
Bottom line.
And I agree with you. This is what happens when you lose, though. We've been on losing teams. You start pointing fingers. You start saying, it's got to be this. It's got to be that. New England, we don't know because they never lose. So let them start losing, and then maybe they'll start fighting.
Cowherd, both of these teams are rolling. Is it crazy to think we're headed for a Jags-Rams Super Bowl?
Yeah, you were on the Rams really early. I can remember you texting me on Sunday, like week 4. You're like, they don't have any weaknesses. Now, the Rams I buy because you got Minnesota and Philly using backup quarterbacks. You know, I mean, Saints are really young in spots. It is such a leap to think of the Jags, warm weather, bad team forever, going into Foxborough and Pittsburgh potentially back-to-back weeks in January, 11 degrees.
They can do it.
Well, they already won in Pittsburgh this year.
I know, but I like them. That's an advantage to me for the Steelers. They only beat Pittsburgh, they destroyed them. I think January football for warm weather teams up there, it's just different.
In the last 4 Super Bowls, 7 of the 8 participants have finished 1 or 2 in point differential. The Rams and the Jaguars are number 1 and 2 in point differential at 166 and 165. They're well ahead of everybody else. Jacksonville is for real. I did see the Rams because I live out here and I watched them early. I'm playing catch up on Jacksonville, but they're for real. And Blake Bortles is a guy that was very immature early in his career, loved to go out and kick it in Florida. He's someone that has calmed down. He's actually a better player right now than we give him credit for.
You want me to talk about the Jags? I mean, that's what I'm here for, right? I've been on this team early. Guys, I got to say this. Last week, we saw them go play Seattle, and they took their souls in that game. They beat them so badly. Seattle went home and got pummeled by the Rams. It wasn't even close. It was a total blowout. And I just feel Jacksonville. I know this sounds crazy because you said they've never done it before. This is a team in 2 games against Houston this year. Tony, 14 sacks. They gave up 14 points. This is a team that's won in Pittsburgh. They destroyed the Baltimore Ravens. I mean, just crushed them. And the Ravens are going to be a playoff team. The NFC feels wide open. I know you like the Rams, but you got the Saints. You've been gassed up on Cam Newton and the Jags. I mean, listen, the Cowboys, if they can sneak in with a healthy Ezekiel Elliott, I do feel like Jacksonville right now is the one team, I'm out on Pittsburgh, that can go into New England and give Tom Brady fits.
Yeah, you know, but defense wins championships. You guys have heard that. But also Hall of Fame quarterbacks win championships, too. And that's the one deciding factor for me that makes it hard for me to think that can they go to the Super Bowl. I believe that they can go to the AFC Championship game, but are they going to be able to get past New England and Hall of Fame Tom Brady in New England? I just don't think that's possible, but it feels good. It feels good to pick them, though, to me.
Yeah, I like it, Tom.
Who's the coach that's beaten New England twice in the Super Bowl? Oh, I think his name's Tom Coughlin, who is now running the Jacksonville Jaguars. He has changed the culture down there. And if there's anybody that could get in a room and come up with a formula, here's how you beat the Patriots in the postseason, is Tom Coughlin.
I will say this, Jacksonville has a little bit of a Baltimore Ravens feel to them, where they're really physical, they jam your receivers, they have a pass rush. Jacksonville, Baltimore, remember, the one team that's gone to Foxborough and New England's always struggle with is the physicality of Baltimore. Jacksonville feels a lot like
The
Baltimore.
New York Jets also went in there with Mark Sanchez, that nasty Rex Ryan defense, the run game, and won. I'm hopeful for Jacksonville.
This is what happens when you have defenses. You look at it. Tampa Bay's defense when they won back in 2000, whatever. Baltimore's defense, and then you look at the Denver Broncos defense when they beat Cam Newton. The reason that those teams won, it ain't because of those quarterbacks. See, you don't even know who those quarterbacks are. Peyton Manning was not even close to being Peyton Manning. They win because of that defense. This is a legendary defense. It's becoming legendary right now.